probably miss
And
Spearville.
Tony, I just have to go.
Thank you so much.
It's gonna hit Dodge City, but it'll miss Spearville.
And if you don't mind giving that to Sean, but you're sending the,
Just copied it because
okay,
I had to email it out somehow since this account probably.
Who made it to national?
this
And you
account.
could, yeah, the calendars, YouTube channel, I mean, because you can.
Can I go onto the YouTube channel and then share it out from that?
Yeah, you can do that too.
Because if I can do that, then.
Yep.
I'm not-
Had that.
Is it called calendars or?
Yeah,
I had
if
one
you'd like
of
to
those
search calendars, USB 443, it should pop.
Adding and Katie are a duo. They're events duos.
This one right here.
Addie Robbins.
Okay.
Adeline.
And then, thank you. Have a great day.
She would have gone. to
Or
the
evening.
seminar For grade school.
It's not.
Cause all of her siblings do the same thing. I mean, they need that here. I think it's because they have more.
I'm like, it's okay.
All right, we're up and moving, just so that you guys know.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you so much.
Okay. So, good afternoon. See y'all. I thought we'd go ahead and start here. I want to give you a counter note to kind of what you guys presented to us last meeting. And go over a few things. Just to start with, I think last meeting, I think we did reach a tentative agreement on teaching during the plan time, putting that on a contract versus the timesheet. So you're good with that. Is that you guys understanding?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to start then, I'll start with the leave from your last proposal on the 7-7 split, 14 days, adding 2 personal days. We're going to stay with the current contract, which is the split of 7-5. I believe that is a good balance, and we're going to stay with that as the split on the leave. On the supplemental, had good discussion and appreciate the thoughts and work that went into doing that. At this time, I think we're not interested in tying it to the base, tying the supplemental schedule to the base, that it would automatically go up every time the base increases. Certainly, if there's areas that need to be addressed, they can certainly be negotiated each year. At this time, we're not interested in something where it automatically increases every time the base goes up. There may be some years where you want to put money, other areas that may be an area where you want to put it. But again, we're not interested in tying it to the base. What we would do in recognition of, I know maybe there hasn't been a increase since going back to 2021-22, where you did some major restructuring, as I understand it. So we would offer a 3% increase on each of the positions, if you will. And just to clarify, that are listed on page 17 and page 18. Okay, those 2 pages would be what we're talking about here, not the other special salary and things that go on past that. So it would just be for those positions listed on page 17, page 18 of the agreement. Okay. On the PD days, on work days, the way it currently reads, the district can use up to 2 hours for staff development on first, second, third. After the first, second, and third 9 weeks, you had asked to remove the PD days from the work days. Here's what we would be willing to do to address that. We would be willing to remove the PD day, the PD time on the second quarter, okay, after the second quarter, those 2 hours, okay, make that a full work day in exchange for 1 hour for back to school night. 1 hour would be allowed for back to school night. That would be covered. And then 2 30-minute faculty meetings, one each semester for the other hour. So by taking off those 2 hours of PD, you'd have the full day for a work day, and what we would ask in exchange for that is the 1 hour back to school night, 1 hour for back to school night, and 2 30-minute faculty meetings.
One each semester?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So what that would do is that would give you full work days at the end of each semester. You'd at the end of the first semester, at the end of the second semester. Okay. On the next thing I think was maybe a clerical error that I think you guys talked about or noted, where the having to do with the parent time was shifted into or professional development was pushed into what was parent time. And I think that was a clerical error more than anything. So we would be willing to make that adjustment and make that parent time in the morning and take off that PD time. So it would go back to the previous calendar as you had it. So there would be no additional PD time added on that morning, those mornings of the parent teacher.
For elementary?
That is in reference to the K through 8 calendar and the issue with the PD time being greater next year than it was this year, and the parent conference time being less next year than it was this year. And literally, as I showed you that tracker that Amy put together for us, what we found was as those things were changed from 4 parent conferences to 2 parent conferences, there was just an error that occurred in there that caused those times to be off. And so we are more than willing to shift that time back to parent conference time from PD time as it currently sits on that K through 8 calendar.
Okay, so just verifying that K through 8 will have 2 conferences this year, one on a night, and then the other is a whole day, the entire schedule. Okay. And that goes from, I don't have the exact times. I just want to make sure I understand correctly. Sorry. So,
Tracker up real fast as well.
yeah, so that means that we have, it doesn't have a time frame on there. It just 6.5 hours conferences, 3.5 staff development. So with that parent teacher conferences, what time does it start and what time does it end is what I'm asking.
We'll have to,
I might be able to answer that.
Go ahead.
so basically it looks like there is,
She's got it.
oh, you do? Yeah, you
And
got it.
Amy's
Yeah,
that.
because we have 3 hours on Wednesday night
Mhm.
in order to make up the other 3 hours and 40 minutes,
Mhm.
right? So we have a total of 6 hours and 40 minutes.
Mhm.
Then it would be, what, we go till 3:15?
So it's like a normal 8 a.m. to 3:15 or,
No, but then it would go into the evening on Thursday because you're getting a
Yes.
full day off on
6.
Friday, right? It'd be 9, sorry, it's gonna be
8 to like 6:30, 6:40.
6:30. It's a little bit more than 6:30, but less than 6:45.
okay, that's what I was just trying to verify is like, it's kind of a normal day plus then the evening
Right,
times for
then
the
the-
rest of the evening period. Okay.
It's
I'll figure
basically
out
what
the
we did
exact-
2 years ago.
Yes.
And again, that's why I thought what we had done is kind of transpose that back onto the calendar. So I'm not sure how that time got shifted, but
Gremlins.
well, there's a bunch of those in that Excel spreadsheet.
This darn.
I just want to make sure I understood so I didn't have any misunderstanding. Thank you, guys.
Very good, good clarification. Okay. Then on the next area, holidays, adding the President's Day. We're not interested in doing that at this time. And for specifying the holidays, we're not willing to do that at this time. We're going to stay with the current language of the contract. Calendar committee as it is. So no change on that position from our side. On the other leave, or I'm sorry, the pay at retirement. Remember, you'd given us a proposal increasing the amount to 125 from 75, and then changing the formula percentages. We would be willing to accept the going to 125. Okay, we would accept that from 75, payment of those days, but we would not be willing to change the formula. The formula would stay the same, so those percentages would stay the same.
Page 47, right?
Yes, I believe that is. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Page 47. So there it would go to 125. Okay. And then on the sick leave bank, yeah, I know we had a good discussion. We appreciate, we kind of had I think, an agreement on kind of what we were talking about. As we looked at that and we got a little bit confusing, we wonder if you would be open to maybe considering another option that we think maybe is simpler. So just hear me out and see what you think.
You said this is on the sick leave bank?
Yes, yes.
Page 50 and 51.
Yeah. So what we thought might be simpler is the board's going to donate days just to go to where the board would donate 150 days at the beginning of each year. Okay. And then staff who want to participate would donate a day. By September 1. Or if they were hired after September 1, they would have 10 days from when they were hired to decide if they wanted to participate by donating a day. And then the call for days became necessary, which don't know that it would. It could, I guess, but that many days being donated. But instead of, if it drops below a certain number, I think it says now.
It says 100.
100, I believe. Instead of that, we would suggest language that says call for days will be made when the committee deems it necessary. When the committee deems it necessary. And the idea is if we're sitting there in April, May, and it dips below 100, probably not necessary at that time to call for days. So we would think just common sense, we wouldn't ask people to donate days at that time. So that would give you, the committee, the flexibility to do that. And then the whole thing then, and then again, if there was a call for days, the board would contribute the 50 days. Again, as I think it says now, if the committee did decide to do the call for days, the board would donate the 50 days. And then the whole thing would reset the following year, so that each year you would have, the board would donate 150 days at the beginning of the year. Anybody that wanted to participate would donate a day each year. That would keep the bank numbers, I think, to cover really what needs to be covered. So
Reset with no rollover.
correct.
Right.
And again, the idea is to just try to simplify things a little bit from the language that we used last time. Okay. Okay. On the next thing is the department chair and team leader pay. You had proposed going to pay for the number of meetings versus the number on the committees, okay? And we've looked at that and we think certainly there's some merit to that. We think especially with the team leaders at the middle school, as I think you guys shared and talked about, that they have a lot of meetings and a lot of work involved in doing that. So what we would like to do at this time is we would agree to your proposal for the team leaders only. Okay, for 1 year, we'd probably do a memo of understanding, MOU, where we would agree to do it for 1 year. And then that would give us a chance to look at those other areas kind of on a K-12 basis and get a little bit more feel for that, a little bit more information for that and how that might play out. So it would be for 1 year. We would try what you guys proposed. It would be for the team leaders only. And the principal would meet with the team leaders beginning of the year, determine the number of meetings that they would have. And then they would be paid based on that formula you gave, 1 week, 1,000, or 1 per week, 1,000, 2 per week, 3,000, 3 or more, 4,000 is what we would agree to, again, for 1 year, give it a try, and then get more information on more of a K-12 perspective and then revisit it next year. Does that make sense?
How does that currently pay out? Does it pay month to month divided, or is it at the end of the
I
school
believe
year?
it's at the end of the year.
So
In June,
then, in the event that, say, they have 3 meetings this month, they have 7 meetings the next month, do you take an average over the year?
that was the conversation that was had, is because of when it gets paid, there would be that opportunity for that adjustment to be made if something changed throughout the course of the year.
Okay.
But the communication piece would be between the principal and whoever that team leader is.
Yeah, I was curious if you were thinking that, or if at the beginning of the year you say you're locked in, you have to have 4 meetings a month. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Flexibility is always good if it's meaningful from our perspective, so.
the payment would be at the end of the year. I think we were thinking.
And part of the reason for that counter proposal is, honestly, as I've said a couple of times, I really like the thought process and it makes sense as to like the people that are having more meetings, doing more of the work. But that would affect all of our department heads at the high school if we just rubber stamp that and said, yeah, let's do that, without knowing what that fully looks like. I don't want somebody to have $3,700 in a stipend this year because they lead a big department, and then next year that's $1,000 because they only have 1 or fewer meetings a week. So we really want to look at it at the middle school level where we believe the current issue is with the number of meetings being led, and then take a broader look at the whole thing from PLC, facilitators, all the way through department heads throughout the course of next year or this coming year.
Didn't want anybody to go backwards, basically. Okay. Okay. Then, to salary and talk about the pay for collaboration and those things that we talked about last time. So here's what we found out as we went back and kind of looked at this, the logistics of making this happen for the collaboration time. Remember, the board's goal is to get 30 minutes solid collaboration time added at the end of the day, and to make sure we had 30 minutes. So in order to do that, we really found that we need some kind of a transition period in order from the end of school to when, before we could start that 30 minutes, really make it work, okay? As we looked at it and realized that logistically, we needed some transition time. So what we would offer, here's our position, is we would move the base to 51,180. 51,180. And that would include adding 10 minutes to the day for that transition time. Okay? That would be built into the salary schedule. So that cost includes that, adding that 10 minutes. Then we would have the 30 minutes of the collab time. Okay? And that would again be paid separately, or not paid separately, but listed separately on the contract like we talked about, on a separate line to set it apart. And I know originally we had talked about trying to ask for 5 days on that. And I think you guys were at 4 days, your offer. We would, in kind of recognizing here the change here, we would ask for 3 days of 30 minutes collab time at the end of the day, for just 3 days, not 4. And again, that would be on a separate line item. And that collab time, again, would be driven by the district. But at the time would be the 30 minutes then after the transition time. So in effect, we are adding, instead of 30 minutes, we are adding 40 minutes to the day. Okay, so
10 payable out of the general fund and 30 payable out of average fund.
correct. And the 10 is again built into that 51,180. That would really ensure that it would meet our goal of providing that time, that collaboration time, and make progress and continue to make progress in those areas that you've worked on. And again, that the Wednesday day would go away. The article on the Wednesday would go away, and this would in effect replace that. So, do you have any questions?
How much were you proposing for that collaboration?
It'd be the daily rate, the teacher's daily rate. Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have said that. Yes.
Each teacher's daily rate.
Correct. Yes.
It is a percentage of their daily rate, not the whole daily rate.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I would prefer the other one.
No, you don't get your whole daily rate for 30 minutes, but good,
Worth a shot.
good work. Good try.
Good try.
Oh, so the teacher's daily rate or the teacher's?
Hammer got a little nervous.
It would be a proration of their daily rate, which then gets turned into basically a minute rate and then calculated out.
So, proposing this, we have several questions that maybe you guys could answer. Since we do have several teachers that have children that are either not in school yet or are in an elementary and they're in a different level, how would that look for them, that daycare kind of providing? So, because if we have a parent right now, say at the high school, and they have an elementary kid and they stay for their 30 minutes, now they have to provide daycare for that child. So what's the plan for that?
I don't think there's any plan on the district's behalf to provide any kind of daycare, if that's what you're asking. I think that would be up to the parent to try to make that adjustment. So, again, it would be the 3 days. The 3 days would be not every day. So, but yeah, there's no plan for the district to provide any kind of daycare, if you will, in that situation.
What about after-school activities such as, we have some like Exedo migrant, that kind of programs, or sports, like what's gonna happen with those?
Good question. And the expectation would be that they would start after the 30 minutes. They would be included in that. So it would push back the start time on those 3 days of those practices. Yes.
So the athletes themselves would just be like hanging out, waiting for their coach, or is there some plan there?
Like supervision.
Yes, for supervision.
That's a fair question. And that's something we could talk about. Look at that. So.
What about like when we're hosting an activity? Because that is also going to affect other schools that come to us if we're not able to do like until 30 minutes later.
Yeah, and again, there may be adjustment in the day, maybe if there's an event or something like that, that could be adjusted from, instead of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, some type of adjustment could be made. I think there would be some flexibility on that. So, yes.
So at this point, there's no plan in place for those particular kinds of possible conflicts?
Not at this time. I mean, again, we can talk about it, and but the idea would be that the coaches and everybody would participate in this, obviously, and then practices would be started after that. So, yes.
So everybody would be responsible to fill out a timesheet. Sorry, my brain's not. Is that what I understand?
I don't think you'd have to fill in a timesheet on that. That would be, and I would. I'm just Jason.
I'm making sure that, and I do appreciate the questions. On the one with the supervision, again, I think schools have figured out how to employ some certain strategies on the Wednesday time that could be carried over to some of those other days. If needed to be to supervise those athletes and things, we would have to have those conversations coming up if this was something that was approved, to make sure that everybody was on the same page with how the logistics of that would work. On the hosting of activities, I would bet that most other districts in the WAC or other places don't live by the same contracted time that we have anyway. And so somebody has figured out how to work within the realm of different contracts. So I'm sure we could figure out what that would look like if we had to adjust times. I don't know if the start times are the same when we go to Liberal and Garden City as when they come to us, or how that works now, because I know they're on different length contracts than we are. So there's got to be some ways that we can work through that. As far as filling out timesheets, are you talking about for the collaboration time in general? No, we're paying that as part of the contract. Even though it would be a separate line on the contract, it is part of the contract. Again, from our conversation last time, the only reason for keeping it off of the salary schedule is because if the point in time came, and to some of the points you made, we want you and the district to have a little bit of way to attack that item by itself if it ever has to be, to where the at-risk funding, we know that there are question marks surrounding at-risk funding currently, and those are the dollars that we feel confident are sustainable for this for the period of time. If that changes 2 years from now, we want this thing to be in its own area where we can say, okay, we were unable to find those $2.3 million somewhere else to put on that. So now we need to remove those minutes as well that we were buying for that time. We don't want you all to go into a situation where we bought this time, but now we pull the funds and the time remains, so to speak. So those are all pieces of that, but as it's going to be paid, it would be on their check as part of their contract salary wage.
Thank you. Very, very good. If we don't get to negotiate for the other group of teachers that are affected, and that is a huge concern for them.
And they are bringing it up to us.
Yes.
They're bringing it up to us as well. I actually had a study done to look at the other contracts in the other districts to see where we would compare if this time was added. And because again, we don't want to flip them on their head, so to speak. And so I have some information that came from their directors as to where our current contract sits versus what we were proposing. And I can say with confidence that even adding this time, we would still be very competitive within the other districts that have contracts under their realm. Many of them would still be higher on a daily basis in the number of hours worked than ours would be, even adding this time to it.
Okay.
I do help some of those. In fact, I help with their negotiations as well. And I will tell you, one of the concerns that is going to come up that you'll have to deal with is that those employees that work for that co-op choose this district on purpose because of in part because of that. And so an effective cut in their hourly rate won't be well received. And I know here at this group, we don't bargain for them. I'm just letting you know what the pushback will be.
And that is very unfortunate. And yes, if the funds were there to where we could do this differently, absolutely, we would love it. I think we have set that precedent in this district that every time there was funds available, we tried to give those funds not just to the people who worked for 443, but also to the people who worked for 613. But we can't put something in our contract, unfortunately, to take care of that group. But at the same time, we also can't continue not to move our district forward. Yes, we have to be aware of it. Yes, we have to see if we can manage it the best we possibly can. And maybe there's some other things we can do along the way. But we have to bargain for this group at this table.
No, and that's completely accurate.
I guess I want clarification. I guess I just want to make sure, because I get a lot of phone calls from 613 high school teachers. And right now, and I know we're not negotiating for them, but I want to be able to answer their questions the best I can. So they are being paid that flat amount for that Wednesday after school. So we're adding 30 minutes, 3 days a week. Is that going to be?
So that would be I haven't had that conversation with Trina and Jason, just to be honest with you.
Okay.
I don't know if they would, I don't know if they'd be able to extend, because I already know our district gets a bad rap within the interlocal already, because we do try to pay those things and try to pay well for those things. And they increased some spending for certain things because our district was doing it. That has not been received well as a whole. So I will have to have a conversation with them before I can accurately answer.
Okay,
I would think it would be meaningful for 1 hour's worth of that time to remain, even though it's not on one day. I just can't answer for that extra 30 minutes right now.
I understand, but that's why I want it brought to your attention.
No, thank you. I
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We had spoken previously in the last session about, yes, we only bargain for the pro staff here, but that there are other outside stakeholders. Among those stakeholders, obviously, are going to be our parents. with regard to childcare, child pickup, things of those. Before, I would think before this group would be willing to sign off on anything, we'd want to know that there are considerations for that. Even though, like I said, we don't bargain for it, we just would like to hear that, yes, you have a plan. And if you could lay out what that plan would be, obviously we can't negotiate those terms, but just the knowledge of knowing that you're taking care of it. Another one would be your,
Can I ask real quick
Yes.
while you're laying this out? So when you say parent, because not much should change from that perspective, because the end time and everything from that perspective still remains
so
the same.
change child pickup time at the end of the day.
No, I mean, we're looking at sheer teacher
Okay.
PLC collaboration time.
And at the secondary level with pushing sports back.
See, and that's what I'm saying, that's where we would have to, that's the plan I'm talking about, where we currently have something in place on Wednesday, that schools have figured out how to operate, because we weren't wanting to send a bunch of middle school kids home for a period of an hour and then bringing them off. So there's some things already being done. We would just have to expand that conversation to 3 days possibly, basically at a 40-minute time frame as opposed to an hour time frame like we currently do on Wednesday. But as far as the parent pickup and drop off, not much should change, because the student contact time is not actually changing within this proposal.
Another stakeholder group that is contacting members of the team and being pretty vocal on social media would be I guess your adjunct or long-term subs, whatever, interim teachers, whatever you call them, your non-certified, non-licensed teachers. Have you considered plans to make sure that they are not getting a raw end of the deal on this?
Yeah.
Just some other thoughts too, like we have some things that go on at different levels. For example, middle school band and like other kinds of activities that they do after school that are not, say like jazz band. I'm just thinking of one that's a comment that I've heard. Jazz band meets after school or before school, and I think it's after school, but they're not a activity for that. It's just part of like tutoring
They
kinds
do
of
after
things.
school tutoring.
Yes,
So
that's the words I'm
so
looking for.
they teach jazz band before school, but then they also, both directors stay after school for tutoring and practice for the kids who can't do that at home. So those things 3 days a week would go away.
I would say, yeah, I mean, we would, until after this period, just like the other activities, we're asking them to move those things back to be able to do this. And so I think we would have to try to stay consistent with all of those types of things as well.
On everything that they proposed, does anybody have any clarifying questions?
I have a couple questions. So that 10 minutes, so that's when school gets out and then we have those 10 minutes before we meet? Because at my school, we don't have safe dismissal. I'm out there with those kids every single day at dismissal. All of us kinder teachers, all of us first grade teachers, we have to be out there to get those kids to their to their whatever, their rides. So, I mean, we're out there till 3:30-ish.
So it's a lot longer process is what you're saying than,
Yeah, I don't know how
What?
safe dismissal works, because we don't do it.
what building are you in?
Miller.
Thank you.
Longer than 10 minutes after the.
Sometimes, it just varies. It depends on how quick parents are there.
Okay. And yes,
So
again,
we
we
have that going.
we have had some conversation, Amy has had some conversation about how this would need to look and how we would need to create some efficiencies to make sure that on those days, at least we're all operating and there's some place where those children are gonna have to go if they're not gone by.
Well, we take them to the office. We usually try to wait till 3:30 and then get them to the office. It's been our protocol.
And believe me, we do recognize that 10 minutes is already, we recognize that it should be longer than that, but because we had already laid something out with less amount of time and the original response was we're not doing anything more than 20 minutes. we're trying to be as efficient as possible with a counter proposal and even cut down the number of, because again, the ultimate goal is just to increase the opportunity for collaboration across the district and to have our teachers be able to focus on those things that the board needs to let them focus on. And we are trying to figure out a way to do that in a meaningful manner. We will have to work through some of these logistics, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like on any given day it's going to work perfectly. So
Right.
we will have
Sometimes
to.
we have parents that talk.
Yes, we will go through some growing pains, I'm sure, and we will have to figure out how to be as efficient as possible at the
I just
elementary
wanted to
level.
make sure we didn't have to go longer than everybody else because
No, that's not the,
we're outside.
There were two other concerns that were brought up when we discussed things. One would be dealing with the discipline policy. There's the expectation that teachers do their own detentions. If little Johnny decides that he's going to step out of line, gets a 30-minute detention, you're only offering me a 10-minute transition period to get from my classroom to that. That could be problematic in those cases. Also, the next day, Johnny's doing great, but he's struggling with his algebra and he needs to come in after school to get help. And where does that factor in?
I also want to clarify real quick too. And you said previously when we were talking about the 30 minutes of collaboration time, it's teacher directed, but then we just heard district directed. So is it teacher directed or district directed or like?
It's district directed. It's district, but ultimately the teachers will have a say in how it works, but ultimately it's district directed.
I think I mean, like, is the district going to say, you have to meet and talk about data on this day, and then you have to talk about what intervention you used on this day, and then on this day, you have to do a training on some sort of particular strategy, I think is what I'm at. Is that what you were getting towards?
Kind of
Okay.
what you're.
Yes.
so the intention would be that the topics for that time would be things that are district focuses, yes.
So you're saying a lot like our current 1 hour after school on Wednesdays. Is that my understanding?
If the topics of that time are currently selected by the district and then using the PLC structures to implement, then yes, that is what I'm talking about.
Did you have an answer on the student that needs either behavioral or academic support after school?
No, I actually wrote down, like, I've got to figure out more about the teacher detention thing because that's and I, again, appreciate you bringing that up because that's a new piece that I wasn't fully aware of. On the after-school tutoring, I was going to ask a question. You said algebra, so I'm assuming that's high
Not
school
just
or
middle school.
middle school.
I just threw that out there because that was my worst subject.
Okay. Well, and I guess, I know at the high school, at least, there's flex time built into the day. And I know on some of those days that they can go to get help on those things with those teachers. So that should be one way that little Johnny could sign out for 42 minutes and go get some help on his algebra. At the middle school level, I'm not sure if there's anything similar to that where they can do that. So
And at the elementary school, we have students at the elementary level that need tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 supports
yeah.
that are gonna need that extra help.
And again, those are things that we would have to, what we're currently doing at the elementary school where we have a lot of students staying after school that aren't in some sort of program.
Most everybody's in those programs unless we did allot some money to principals to do an after-school tutoring through some at-risk and title funds. But those could be adjusted. I mean, they could maybe do those in the morning. Those are paid positions. Those it's not teachers volunteering. You know, maybe that time would be moved to the morning because a lot of kids are there by the time the first bell, or not first bell, the door opens. Or it could be held on the 2 nights if we do agree on three days for the collaboration time. There are still those other 2 days. I realize it. I don't know. I just don't know how widespread that would be because not every school was doing that tutoring thing.
High
And
school,
I don't know of any, I don't know of, attention wise, I mean,
so the high school does do after-school tutoring for math. It rotates between two specific math teachers. They volunteer to do it. I don't believe that they are paid. I think they, as a department, have just determined that they are going to offer that. I think. I know Patrick's has talked about it. But again, like you say, the high school does have flex. And if teachers are doing their jobs correctly and calling them in, that is where that's supposed to be done.
I do know at our level, I'm not sure about the other school. I think they also have some tutoring after school and we have some tutoring after school. So, I mean, it's pretty important because we have athletes who like just at the end of the year that we don't see for several days. So the after school tutoring is pretty important for them.
how do they schedule after school tutoring if there are athletes?
If they're athletes, before our Wednesdays, we used to do Wednesdays. And right now, if they're an athlete, they don't get to have after-school tutoring. It's just, sorry, good luck, hope you can catch me during our one-day advisory that we can meet with you. So,
That's shifted to the.
no. Because some of them can't get there because they ride buses or, other things too, but, yeah. Do we need a caucus? Yeah, do you guys have any other questions before we ask? We would like to caucus.
Okay, thank you.
Do we, 5?
I think we probably need about 15 just to
Yeah,
really
if we
discuss
could
some stuff
Come
at
back at
5 o'clock.
5
Yeah.
o'clock?
That way,
5
yeah,
minutes.
about 15 minutes for us and 5 o'clock. That's a break for the other part too.
I will walk down and make sure that that door is open down there on that
Okay,
conference room floor.
we appreciate that. Johnny, are you gonna mute that?
Sure.
Thank you so much. I'm assuming you have them.
Oh, I have
You do have the maps.
Yes.
Okay, so, kind of going down the list, you talked about staying with the 7 and 5 on the leave days. We're going to end discussion on that.
Okay.
On the supplemental, I'm gonna come back to that later because that's gonna be a part of the bigger salary schedule. So at the fourth item that you talked about, the professional development on work days, removing it, those 2 hours and then adding it in later. The discussion on that was, no, we'd like to walk away from that conversation at this point. We feel like it's trading paid time for unpaid time. That's not something we're willing to ask our body to do.
So you're dropping that.
Yeah, we're walking away from that one. On the professional development, move to the parent-teacher time to fix the clerical error. We agree, and we're ready to move on with that and accept the discussion as had previously. On the holidays, with not having the President's Day or adding the holidays, when we spoke last time, it seemed like you were open to the idea of adding the holidays if we were willing to drop the President's Day thing. We proposed that in our survey to the members, and they were willing to accept that if we could codify those holidays into the negotiated agreement. Then we would be willing to walk away from that, stop having that conversation, if you'd be willing to codify those days into the negotiated agreement.
We'll talk about it.
Okay. On the, where did I go? The leave, changing that to 125 without changing the formula. We're willing to agree with you at that point and move on. Accept the 125 and not change the formula.
For the buyback.
Yeah, on the buyback.
On the buyback of days. Okay.
Correct.
At retirement.
So at retirement, so we're good with the 125 and no change to it.
Correct.
Yeah.
On your 8th point, you had the sick bank changes, and at this point, we'd like to walk away from that discussion. We don't feel that the counter offer is adequate.
Well, we had talked about it the last time with the language that you guys feel is kind of messy. And we thought we had agreed that the leave bank district donates 150 of those days, but you get credit for half of the days if they are forfeited. And then you get, we also get 50% credit of that. And any extra days donated, you guys get 50% up to the 150. And then there's no cap on our days, and we call for a day
And that's,
in August,
yes.
but no cap on our leave bank. Because we feel, the reason that we feel that this is yeah, we keep the carryover. The reason that we feel that that's important is to keep the viability of the bank and supporting the members and the people who use that and all of the people who have access to that donation.
That's perfectly acceptable. Again, the whole counter proposal was just for clarity. I feel like what we had talked about the other day is perfect, that it works perfect for what that bank is intended for. It's just making sure that, so at what point then, if that bank continues to grow, which was the intention of it originally, are there so many days in there that we need to consider whether the certified staff and the board need to keep dropping days in there every year?
I think we could put in some language that continues to review this so that it's a topic brought back as we
And it would be.
see it grow.
Potentially. When I was thinking about that, the whole idea of resetting it every year to keep it simple was at some point, there's gonna be enough days in there, and then how is that split gonna happen between the staff and the district, and what's that gonna look like? So that would be something just down the road that we would have to make sure that we consider as that bank does hopefully continue to grow. Because with these new provisions, it should. Normally what we're seeing is what, probably 80-ish days left in that
Yes.
bank each year. Plus then, as people leave the district, if they're not eligible for the retirement provisions, I see more of those days potentially being donated into that bank down the road. If people are leaving and have days and don't have anywhere to put them, it would only make good sense that they donate them to that bank. And so as I was thinking about that, we want to make sure that down the road, we discuss how that would look if we get to a year where maybe we've got enough days we don't need any donations into that bank this coming year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think if we just keep some language, if we
Okay.
fluidly work on some language that triggers an automatic, we look at this and neither one of the people groups have to notice it. It's just going to be discussed.
And so maybe that's where that cap comes in. Maybe at 300, that discussion occurs.
Okay.
Does that make sense? At first I was thinking, why would we ever need a cap? Like when it first came up. But then when I thought through it more, I thought there might be a good reason to put a cap there. And it's so like, because if every teacher that wants to participate that year is putting a day and the board's putting in 150, that bank should grow.
It should.
And so maybe it's at 300, then we're going to have that discussion about, do we really need any days next year? Maybe the people fortunate enough to be on that contract get access to the bank without donating a day for that one contract year. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it,
The goal was not to try to take days that were donated. It was just trying to figure out how to make this thing as clean as possible without it getting too confusing for the people who have to manage it
yes.
in our department.
Flip side to the reset is that if we reset and have to donate every year, then we functionally have 11 leave days every year instead of 12, so.
So, but I think that the committee probably would be very willing to take that it has to make a call at 100 or less and just change it to the call for days is deemed necessary by the committee. Because I don't think that if we continue down this road, I highly doubt we're gonna have to do too much beyond what they feel.
Okay, so just to be clear, because what we discussed last time is different from what was discussed, earlier. What are we actually TAing?
Yeah, that's,
The leave bank is 150 from the district, but at the end of the year, those that leave, half of their, whatever they forfeit is credited to that 150 for the district. Half of it's credited to the DCNEA, getting it without any.
Basically, all of that amounts to is we're going to cut that number in half before it goes into the bank. The board's still going to put in 150 days. It's just only half of those that are donated are going to go into the bank, so to speak.
The half that are forfeited by people leaving or people who couldn't do the retirement or that kind of thing. And then we also talked about removing the December call for optional and just leaving in the May call for optional. And then having an open call at the beginning of the year or the 10 days after they have been hired. If they're not here
That would
by
happen-
September 1st, if they're not hired by
That would happen every year for those that want to participate.
until we have a capped number of at minimum 300 in the bank at the end of a
Yep.
contract year. Then we would just automatically bring it back to the table and discuss it between the two groups.
Sounds good to me.
so let's go through that one more time.
Yeah, I know. It's really hard to try to catch everything,
Yeah.
so.
So the district contributes 150 each year.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. And then those who are maxed out or leave the district can contribute, but the board gets credit for half of it.
Mhm.
So basically, again, to make it as clear as possible,
If 300.
if we just said that half of what they contribute will go into the bank, that's literally what's happening. Like, the board is getting credit for the other half,
Uh-huh.
up to 150, but those 150 are always going to be donated anyway, regardless of whether it comes from those people or
So
From
really,
the- yeah.
it's a donated from them or the BOE, whichever comes first.
yes.
Donated from the forfeit or the BOE.
Removing the call in December.
Yes, the voluntary call.
And then at the beginning of the year, teachers donate a day, then,
Optional.
Staff donates by September 1st or 10 days from the hire date.
optional.
I think
If
what
they
we
wanna-
discussed.
if they wanna
pay for
participate.
play.
Yeah,
They want to
Yeah.
participate.
Yeah.
They have to donate.
Yes.
Okay.
if they want to get in the sick bank, they have to donate.
Then if it builds up to 300, then
It's an automatic brought to the table and discussed.
no more donations are required.
Well,
that would
that
be
would be a
discussed at
discussion
the
that we
table.
would have at the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the call for days is going to change and not be when it drops a certain number, but when the committee deems it necessary.
Yeah, we're good with that. So when it hits 300, if in the middle of the year, you have a meeting then to talk about?
No, it comes to the negotiations table without either side having to notice this. Conversation will occur then and we decide, we can discuss the gist of
You
it.
have to reopen.
Right, it's an
Yeah.
automatic.
I would, and I liked what you said originally, if we finish the year with
Yes.
300 or more days, then it's automatically part of the discussion the following year during negotiations.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
And it just means that one side doesn't have to add it as one of their topics to have it negotiated that year is basically what it amounts to.
Mhm.
Which again, I'm all in favor of because that's a good thing. And it has been really good that we've been able to increase from 7.5 to 20 days for our people to be able to get that time. And it's very meaningful. So hopefully that will allow it to continue to operate.
So are we good to TA that one as is?
Just as we had just talked about it. And we have that, we'll put that in our,
Good.
We're gonna have to do some wordsmithing to
Right.
get it to.
oh, absolutely.
But with those particular provisions, it makes perfect sense.
On the 9th item, the proposal, or a counter proposal on the department chair and team lead. We are willing to TA it and accept it as you presented it today. We think that's a fair compromise with one exception. Hopefully you think it's a friendly amendment. We would like to, you talked about that, being for 1 year. Rather than do an MOU, we would like that one to have a 1-year sunset for an automatic reopen for discussion during the next bargain.
I think that's fine.
That's fair.
Okay. And then-
Sunset's after 1 year.
Right, and if we can't come to an agreement on that, then it reverts to the old.
That's fine.
Okay.
But you're good with the team leaders?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we thought that was a fair compromise.
Okay.
Okay, which the last point to discuss would be the salary, so the supplemental salary pool and the general salary pool. On that, at this point, we don't feel like there's any movement on the addition of days. The amount of money that was offered, as we do the math on it, it ends up being, it takes the base as you described to 51,180 versus the old base of 49,250, a difference of 1,930. When we calculate the cost of time versus the hourly rate for the average employee, it ends up being just a $667 pay raise to the base after you take that increase out. And that's the kind of pay raise we expect in a 1A school, not in a 6A school. We don't feel that that's an equitable pay raise. Also, it falls well below rate of inflation, rate of CPI.
Say that again, I just want to make sure I'm tracking with you. 'Cause
Okay.
Some of those numbers sound familiar and some of them didn't.
Okay, so if I take the lowest salary on the scale, which is the 49,250, calculate that out against the 183 days, divide that by the number of hours in the day, right? That gives me the hourly rate formula you would use on that. Okay, so if I take that pay raise minus or subtracted from the new base proposal of 51,180, That's gonna leave a difference of 1,930. So if I take that hourly rate and multiply it back against the 183 days, that ends up being the cost of that proposal at 1,263. If I take that amount out of the difference, I'm looking at a new difference of $667. So what you're looking at is the cost to the district to increase that extra 10 minutes is 1,263. The total difference, 1,930, leaves 667 as the cost of living adjustment. And there's no universe where 667 or is going to do anything against the CPI or the cost of living for the fiscal year.
So we must have got there differently. But I showed that's like a 5.5%.
You're showing the combined, and we're breaking it apart because that's how I would have to do it if I was ordering all of these off of a menu a la carte. I would be breaking it apart, and breaking it apart a la carte, it ends up being almost an insulting figure.
That's certainly not the intention. That's why I'm asking
Yeah.
questions. Because, go ahead.
So 49,250 divided by 183, so that's the daily rate, and then divide that by 6.667, right, the hourly rate. Is that correct so far?
Well, you went at it different, so keep going.
Okay, so it's $40 an hour. Your proposal is 2 hours extra, so that's $80 a day. Is that correct?
Well, I went a different route on it. The way that I did it is a little bit different, but follow that through.
Okay, all right, so I'm just gonna take this figure times 2, so we get 80.73. So 80.73 times 183,
We'll plug that into
or
your.
not 183, it should be 36 weeks.
So I went into your salary matrix where we agreed we were gonna start. And that's what I used to come up with these.
Salary matrix. Well, right, but when you plug in your salary matrix, it does come out to 5.5%. You're correct. But a big chunk of that 5.5%, like 2/3 of it, is just paying for the extra time that you're asking for. Does that make sense?
No, because I came up with like a third, but keep going. Keep
Right.
going. So,
Right. So what we're saying is what you're offering us is a lot less than
Well-
5.5%, because part of it's just covering the extra time.
some of it is, I'm not denying that, but I think we're off somewhere. So like you can't just take that base pay and say, hey, let's change it by 3% because every year you've got step and column movement in there too. So
Right.
that's always been included as part of whatever X% raise that we've done in the past. So that doesn't move a full 3% to get a 3% raise or a 5.5% raise or something to that effect. So I'm just trying to get on the same page with you because
Right.
you went a different route.
Well, but where the
The
difference.
intention was certainly not to insult anyone.
No, but.
It was to pay you market price for the 10 minutes.
Right, so what we're positing is that a big chunk of, and I can do the math in just a minute, but the big chunk of what you proposed is really just paying for the extra time. And then we should be talking about a raise on top of that. And right now, that on top of that is $666.
So I did the math. I mean, maybe we need to get to looking at that. Because we started out at,
So there's 51,180.
we're at 49,250 today, right?
Okay. If I can type.
Yeah, so the 51,180 minus the 49,250 is a difference of 1,930.
Just go, let's start where we are today.
This is far enough away, it's not quite entering right. That's right. 49,250. So just for step and column movement,
Right.
500K.
Okay, so same numbers I got, so we're at the same place, at least right this minute. So, and you can see there's 1.87%. and we haven't even touched the base. So, okay, keep going.
Right, that's just step and column.
I get it, but it's still a 1.87% increase
So,
without touching the base.
For experience, you get another year of
Yeah, no,
experience.
I understand. I'm just, that's where I started, so.
I just want to
We
paste.
can't ask Andrea, she's on.
Okay. I'm
Because I was
pasting
like, maybe we should call
this
her.
value here just
Yeah, no,
just to
I
have
get
it
it.
handy.
I get it.
And then you
So
propose.
then move that
5118.
49,850.
5118.
There we go. 5118. All right, so then we go back. That's 1.4, 1.48, if you want to be specific. Equals, oh, I swear I only pushed it once. Equals, what is that? Oh, 2 minus.
Whoa,
So,
a little heavy-handed, Johnny.
My keyboard is terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
well, I see. I think that might help it. So O2 minus, no, not 0.2. Sorry, O2 minus, 0.6. It's not as a percentage, because that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at
yeah, I don't think.
dollars. So the raise, like the actual raise that would be done, like the normal expectation of the step is 979,000. There are,
Just for the record, we didn't offer a raise at 979,000.
right, I mean, that's over, the thing about the steps is they're giving you added value,
So-
and that's the cost.
I understand. So our numbers, like, you've got 3% at 804,581. I mean, we're spot on it, like at that. So our numbers are tracking
That 3%.
at that point. So let's, I mean, I hate it if I made a mistake, but
No,
let's
well-
talk about what that 10 minutes costs.
So, all right, help me walk through this then.
I mean, I'm just saying, some of the numbers that I'm seeing are matching so far.
Right, so
Yes, we.
So the way I figure-
Somewhere.
the way I
would like
calculate
to
the
get
cost of that 10 minutes is you take the,
The new per month.
or, yeah, well, actually, let's back up. I did the 10 minutes times 187, or I mean, 183. So that's how many days you have in the contract.
Yep.
So I took the 10 times 183, come up with 1,830. And then if we're going to break that down to an hourly, then.
So
Hold on, there's-
I converted that to a number of hours. Well, I'll try.
Well, real quick, just to make sure math is correct, it wasn't all 183 days,
No, they wanted to add 10 minutes to the contract.
just flat out all 183.
The 10 minutes
You know what,
was every day.
Oh, it was every day,
There's-
not
10 minutes,
not
but
just
the
the
30 was not.
there's a disconnect
Oh,
there. So
okay,
that's,
that's
yes.
all right.
That's a disconnect. I punched it in as being all 183 days, stupidly not realizing that we were only gonna do 3/5 of that. So I need to take that time.
Now, the 10 minutes is for like every
It
day.
They
was
want
every day.
10 minutes for.
You do want that for all
183
183 days, okay. So, yeah, if we've got that, that's gonna be 1,830 minutes, divided by 60 to get the, how many days worth of, oh, wait a minute, that's
How
not
many
right.
minutes?
Or, yeah, how many minutes that's gonna, no, I had the minute. Now I'm confused. See,
Yeah, you're already in.
I should have had better notes.
So, okay, so that's 30 and a half.
30 and a half.
We're still tracking so far.
Okay.
That's what I had.
Where did I come?
We,
30 and a half hours a year.
Yeah,
okay,
and then
And
the hourly rate, I took the, basically And I think I did the math wrong because I had the wrong percentage on there. But I think I ended up having less than what Johnny did because
It functionally adds about 4.57 days, I think.
Yeah.
I took 30 and a half times the divided by the 6.6.
It's, yeah, 4.57 days.
So we're on the same page so far.
Okay, and so 4.57 is what we need to keep in mind, so we jot that down. All right, so at 49,250, divided by 183, that's $269, 12.5 cents a day or 13 cents a day. And then you take that times 4.57.
7. That's another $1,229.
Right, $1,229.
Times 450.
yeah. So that's
Teachers.
I had it wrong.
There's another $500,000, $553,000. Actually, I came up a little higher number once I did it on the computer, but
Yeah, that's,
Is this the?
just look at how many positions we have.
should be 450. We haven't changed that in the last couple of years.
So we budget every year for 450, but we fill about 300 and some odd.
Yeah, we have, I forget how many long-term subs, but it's quite a bit.
All right,
Okay, we're on
so,
the same page so far.
scrap that. Go back to this. Go all the way back up. Over. Equals. 3 minus that. Why did error?
Do you have enough space for it to fit?
No, that doesn't make any sense why I would error. Well, you know what, I'll just do this. Minus. What is that? 4. 3 minus 0.5. Okay. So the raised portion that we're looking at is 426. So
I mean, that, to me, it looks like it's in there, because your grand total is $1,480,000. With everything all done, your time, your step column. I mean, it's a 3% COLA plus your 553. It's actually a little more than that. I mean, unless I'm missing something, I'm trying to make it right. But that 1,480 is real close to what I came up with. Trying to figure a COLA and literally pay market price for the time.
That's the cost of it.
That's not the cost, that's.
And I mean, if we want to look closer into the spreadsheet itself, I mean, that's fine, because I honestly didn't go in and re-verify all kinds of formulas or anything like that.
Oh,
What do you mean?
But it looked like, to me, it looks like it's there.
yeah, the formulas are the same as last year. Just made a copy of the thing and then flipped it. So
1229.
That's the cost of right, based on the hourly rate times the-
Johnny, the cost,
It is confusing, because you can't just take the base and add X% on it, because because of your step and column movements. I mean, you saw there was almost 2% just for that, the way that that's, but I think we tweaked that last year to reward longevity. I don't remember the exact increases on some of that, but.
That was several years ago.
Yeah.
But, okay.
We did the flat.
That was like 3 years.
Yeah, we sure did, yes.
3 years ago, there were some cells over there in the Masters plus 30, 20 down there that saw substantial increases comparatively.
To me, that 1,480,000 looks like a 3% COLA and paying for the 10 minutes on every day.
Okay, so I guess what I want to know is what you think, what your number is for the cost of the proposal alone, just to add the 10 minutes.
About 675,000.
Said 675,000, give or take.
Yeah.
So
So that's more than that 553. I mean, we
Yeah,
really was
well,
trying
was
to
it
make
paying
that right.
So paying at the hourly rate, because this is, the 553 is calculated for the base, so.
Yeah, well, I created a new base, 3% COLA, took that base, and then paid for the time. So that's probably why that's higher than.
When you subtract out the time from the 5.52%, the time calculated from what we have here is about like 1.82%. So it's 3.7% is the raise. Functionally, the rest is paying for time.
I mean, I guess it depends. Do you buy the time and then add the COLA, or do you add the COLA and then buy the time? But,
This is just straight from the 51.
but I came up with the 1,400,000 like you have, and I got a 5.52 just like you.
Right. Yeah, I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is, once you factor in how much of that 5.52% is paying for the extra time,
Yeah, because
it's really only 3.7%, right?
Only. I'd say, hey, that's great. That's a 3.7%
I
raise.
mean,
Johnny, I think we need to caucus just so we have our information,
okay.
I
because
want to make sure that all.
Oh, no,
is accurate.
I get it. And
I want to make a statement real fast.
Yeah.
Around 6:30, there's supposed to be a severe thunderstorm
Yeah.
rolling through here. I'm not going to be in this building with my truck parked in the parking lot when that occurs, just so you know.
so do you want to say, how about we just, since we have the 13th, let's come back to this on the
I'm
13th?
open to discussion, but I wanted to bring that up because I don't want us to be stuck here
Yeah.
if we have places we can go put vehicles and things.
Yes, all of us would
When
agree.
a severe
with that.
storm rolls through.
All
I
right,
know what insurance costs nowadays from that perspective as well.
and I know how long it'll take you to get there, so, yeah. Are you guys, we're fine, like, being able to take this back to our group and figure things out and work through things and then come back on the 13th, and we're essentially discussing salary and our supplementals at that moment. Is that the way we understand it?
That's how I currently.
It seems like that's the only thing we have left out here.
That's the only thing that's open, we all agree, is salary and supplementals.
Correct.
Yeah, and well, we went through, made tentative agreements on things.
And that is
Where we're at.
also in our.
Moved on or
active-
made agreements on everything else, just previously.
Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. We would have to discuss the 30 minutes still, because that's, yeah,
That's part of your.
yes, yes.
Well, which again, that's tied directly to.
To the
finance,
salary, yeah,
so
that-
makes sense.
So we're not agreeing to the 30 minutes or the 10 minutes. We need to go back and do some crunching of things for us.
Sounds good to me.
And I'm sorry that we have to cut it short, but I agree, nobody wants their car out in a storm.
So the calendar then, we're good with just leaving that.
Actually, that I think is back in you guys'
Yeah.
court about whether the
The
calendar.
codifying of the holidays.
Yeah, codifying of the holidays without President's Day.
Yeah, were you able to discuss that when we broke?
No, we honestly didn't. We talked more about this, so that'll give us time to have that conversation.
Okay.
The only other thing real quick that I wanted to bring back up, because at the end of the last one, and I don't know where we left it and it hasn't come back up today, is you mentioned that the E4E versus keep, we wouldn't be able to get there unless there were some concessions. Remind me again what those requested concessions are for that piece.
A limit, a hard limit on the number of goals and artifacts
Set by the teacher.
set by the teacher.
Number of goals
And artifacts.
Well, what we specifically said was 1 and 1.
Yeah,
One goal, one artifact, and that the teacher set the goal.
And so I guess when you say that, I'm assuming that would be a carryover from what they set currently in Frontline?
It would have to be, I mean,
it wouldn't, I don't know, I did not do keep, so I don't know.
So it could
That
different.
just,
be,
When you do keep, it's different than your front line. So like the front line is more of like the radar things of like what your goal overall is. When you're doing keep, it's more targeted of like, I'm trying to think of the areas that they're talking, like my classroom management, my instruction, and my content, curriculum, that kind of goals is what it's asking about. Because they lay it out in the rubric of what things are possible goals.
and I've seen some of them where they have a list of recommendations, choose a goal from one of these topics, and then the teacher picks the one that they think fits them the most. And, okay, I'm struggling in this area, so maybe that's the goal that I need to set.
And then we also said, compensation financially for those on.
that's the one I remember you and I talking about something right at the end of that. I could not remember what exactly it was, so. Okay,
one goal set by the teacher using
Mhm.
and one artifact.
That goes with that goal, obviously.
Okay.
And then
And then
financial
financial for what?
for those on evaluation.
That they be paid extra while they're on evaluation?
Because it's adding to their plate of besides normal, regular stuff. The way that KEEP does it compared to E4E. E4E is, here's my evaluation, my artifact. KEEP requires me to have it in certain formats and upload it and all of the other items too.
It's
So-
not just part of doing the process though.
E4E does not require any artifacts.
Right.
It
And
increases
the goal
work.
settings, the goal setting is a part of a normal conversation, but as far as the artifact uploads, the data, that's, it's part of the keep, but it's not part of the E4.
we can, I just wanted to make sure, I couldn't remember that conversation, and I wanted to make sure I had those pieces so we could have a discussion about it, so thank you.
Okay.
Because we have agreed upon supplemental for 0 hour and teaching on contract time is now a contract, on plan time.
Yes.
The leave, we're gonna leave as the 7 and 5 split, but we're gonna do the leave bank comments, question, a change that we've talked about. We've agreed to do a 1 year of the team lead, remove the PD out of the conferences and go to the conference all day as it was a clerical error. And I believe that's where we're at right now. And then the changes to where the elementary,
Okay.
substituting on plan is at in the negotiated agreement, and that you're adding some language for adding those positions that we talked about. And
Yeah, those were the ones we TA'd on that very first.
yes,
day.
yeah.
Okay, that was before.
Yeah, that was
So
before
you-
you.
yeah, you-
I don't think we have that one green. I think it's still orange, or gray, but that's where.
So you all agree the open items are salary, supplementals, and then the keep
and we've got to figure out what we can or can't do within that realm.
And the codifying of the holidays.
And then the 30 minutes and the 10 minutes.
30 minutes in the 10, yeah. Okay.
And then, when we break, would we be able to stay in this room for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are you able to end stream?
Oh, this has been like